Welcome back to another episode of Hoosier Adventures. Today we're taking a look at Epcot at the Disney World Resort. The title of this episode is taken from a joke from an episode of The Simpsons. Here you see Epcot's most famous site, the giant golf ball, which houses the attraction Spaceship Earth. Now let's go take a look at some of the other attractions in Future World. Here you're going to see the iconic Disney World monorail going by. Epcot is separated into two different sections. There's the World Showcase and Future World. We're currently in Future World. The original idea of it was to be sort of a glimpse into the future. And here you'll see Spaceship Earth. And this sort of monolithic looking building in front of you is the former Ellen's Energy Adventure building. It's currently being redone into a Guardians of the Galaxy roller coaster. Now, what you can't see on camera that I was able to see that day is the entire building has sort of been hollowed out, and you could actually see daylight out the other side of it. Supposedly, that's going to be where the line is, and there's going to be another show building for the coaster. Here's the abandoned Wonders of Life Pavilion. Now, Disney has announced that they're going to redo the Wonders of Life Pavilion and sort of remake it into some kind of glorified children's play place. I don't know. I'll keep you posted on how that turns out, but we'll see. This has been closed for a long time, but they open it for Epcot's various festivals. So you might be wondering what all these people like me are standing here waiting in line for. Is it a ride? Are we waiting to see Mickey Mouse? No, we're actually waiting to get inside of a place where you can get free Coca-Cola products from around the world. And it's kind of a lot more known than it used to be. Originally, when I would go in here as a young kid, there was never anybody in here. I guess a lot of people didn't know about it. But you can go in and sample Coca-Cola products from around the world. I remember vividly as a child, there was one from Israel that used to make people gag. You could hear people audibly gag when they drank it. None of these were that great or that bad, but it's still fun to stop in. This is Journey into Your Imagination, starring Figment. I'm a huge Figment fan. I've always loved the character Figment from my days at Disney World. From what I understand, when Epcot originally opened, it was devoid of Disney characters. And even when I was a young child in the 90s and in the early 2000s, it was still kind of that way. And Figment sort of served as the mascot of the park. Now, his ride has been redone a few times. I'll direct you to some other YouTube videos if you're really interested in the history of this ride, because it has a bit of a troubled past, but it's always worth going on whenever you're at Epcot. The Living Seas Pavilion, in my opinion, is the best kept secret of Epcot. It's a gigantic aquarium. At one time, it was actually the world's largest aquarium, and I love aquariums, but the thing is, I never feel like I get my money's worth. They tend to be really expensive. It's $30 a person or whatever. This is included with your admission to Epcot. You can wander around this. A lot of people just go on the Nemo attraction, which is sort of an Omni-Mover attraction that isn't that great. But they don't stay and wander around the aquarium. The aquarium is massive. When I was here with my wife, we ended up spending maybe an hour and a half in it.
Yeah, honey. This used to be the world's biggest aquarium.
And it's for reasons like this that makes Epcot my favorite theme park in the world. Now, as a kid, I really didn't like Epcot very much. I didn't like it nearly as much as the other Disney parks. It didn't have Mickey Mouse. It wasn't about fun, excitement, and thrilling rides. But as an adult, I really, really appreciate it. And I would even go back to retroactively say that it had a big effect on me as a child, much more than the other Disney parks did. It was about science and discovery and seeing the world. And as an adult, I really appreciate that a lot more than I did as a child. This is my first in a series of YouTube videos about my trip to Disney World. Now, if you're interested in Disney World or Disney content, there's a bunch of great YouTube channels out there that I would recommend. I'm more interested in the Disney World side, the rides, and that kind of stuff. So I recommend that you check out either Park Ride History or Defunct Land or both. And that'll sort of send you down a rabbit hole of very interesting, well-made content about Disney parks and Disney rides. Here's the manatee tank. I could have stayed and watched these manatees all day. They're real fun and interesting. These are rescues. They've been hit by boat propellers, and if you look really close, even on camera, you can see the notches in them from the boat propellers that hurt them. It's really tragic. I know that's a real problem in Florida. I'm glad they're rescuing these sea cows and giving them a good home. Here you see one coming in. This is sort of like a spectator tank, and then they have these little holes here that you can see that they can swim out into a much larger tank. Something that not a lot of people seem to know is that you can pay extra money and participate in some kind of diving within the tank, or you can also have a meet and greet with some dolphins and things like that. Now, that's not included in your park admission, obviously, but if you want to, you can go ahead and book that. You can see some divers in the tank there. This building's kind of off on its own. It used to be a restaurant. Now, I'm not really sure what purpose it serves other than being a glorified gift shop for Epcot's many food and wine and flower festivals and that kind of stuff. Epcot has so many festivals, it's just kind of a thing now, and it, I guess, drives traffic to the park. I'm not really interested in any of them, but I hear good things about them. This was some kind of flower festival that I was there for. Again, doesn't really interest me. I don't know how many people are really coming specifically for this, but hey, as far as I'm concerned, it's just icing on the cake. This building is very unusual in that it's connected to the rest of the park via these very long walkways, and I believe there's 2 or 3 of them that will get you to this building. The building is off on its own, kind of in between Future World and the World Showcase, so it's not easy to get to, but I figured it was worth walking over to look at it. Now we're going to take a look at some of the World Showcase pavilions. This is Mexico. Now, a lot of people don't realize you can actually go inside the Mexican pavilion. So right now we're inside of it. On the outside, it looks like a giant Aztec temple, but if you go through a pair of doors, it has this large market scene, and it's lit like it's nighttime. It also has a ride inside of it as well. The ride is, I would describe it as whelming. I sometimes refer to it as Mexican It's a Small World because the characters in the ride, except for these 3 caballeros here, just look like the characters from It's a Small World. This is the Norway Pavilion. It's home to the new Frozen ride. If you're interested in riding that, that's going to have a really long wait time, and it breaks down a lot. Actually, when we were waiting in line, it broke down. We had to wait like over an hour for them to fix the ride. The USA Pavilion, though, has a great show inside. There's a show inside this building, but other than that, the pavilion is meh. It's not very good. It looks like a colonial era building. And there's not a lot to do except for the show. Again, the show is impressive. I enjoy it. The Japan Pavilion, I actually think, is the coolest looking of all the pavilions. It does not have a ride, but there is a large store that sells sort of, famous Japanese products, and there's this, I believe it's a Shinto gate here. I'm sure someone, if you know what that's called, put that in the comments for me. And this is inside what is kind of like a rotating exhibit. So this is Japanese kawaii culture, but they'll rotate this exhibit out with something else in the future. Disney actually owns the distribution rights to all the Studio Ghibli films in America, and they just sit on those things. So I don't know why there's not a Studio Ghibli tie-in. The Morocco Pavilion is a really cool looking pavilion as well. Again, this one doesn't have a ride. There are also more pavilions I don't have videos of. There's a France pavilion, there's a United Kingdom pavilion, there's a Canada pavilion, a Germany one, and a China one. Some are cooler than others, and really only the Norway and the Mexico one have rides. There's also a show in the USA one, like I mentioned earlier, and there's kind of like a movie in the French one and the Canada one. Now, from what I hear, the French pavilion is getting a Ratatouille ride, so I'm really excited about that. Love that. It's one of my favorite Pixar movies. The cool thing about this Morocco pavilion, though, it's basically set up kind of like a market in the streets, and you can wander around. This has all been the Morocco pavilion. And it has all these different shops selling these different things, like rugs and silks and scarves. Nothing that remotely interests me, but it does feel like you're in sort of a miniature city when you're there. Like, comment, and subscribe. I hope you enjoyed this video. I've got more Disney World videos coming out. I'm going to have one about the monorail. I'm going to have one about Hollywood Studios, so be on the lookout for more of those.